Trainspotting is one of the most relentlessly brilliant movies of all time. Like a great album containing only absolute banger songs and no filler, Trainspotting presents scene after scene after scene of peak entertainment. Each scene so good they are mini masterpieces in their own right. This consistency of excellence is one of the many reasons Trainspotting is so incredibly rewatchable. This video will focus mostly on the visuals of Trainspotting, how Danny Boyle uses cinematography and visual symbolism to communicate plot, themes, and characterization. Full spoilers ahead, this analysis assumes that you've seen the movie, so I won't be bothering with plot summaries. If you haven't seen Trainspotting, go watch it. In the opening scene, Renton narrates the iconic Choose Life monologue while running away from security guards who are chasing him and Spud. The juxtaposition of the Choose Life monologue with running away symbolizes how Renton uses heroin to avoid the responsibility and mundanity of normal life. It also introduces the duality of Renton's character. He's a junkie thief, but also deeply philosophical and intelligent. At Mother Superior's, Renton stands in front of a hole in the wall. This could indicate that he is attempting to fill a hole in himself with heroin. It also introduces a visual motif that will reoccur throughout the movie: decay. The 5 chairs behind Renton represent the 5 main characters. Each chair is a different colour, just as each of the main characters has a unique personality. This interpretation is confirmed when, in the next shot, the boys are introduced. They wear no uniform, they are misfits. A hodgepodge of personalities that contrasts sharply against their opposition. 5 lads in identical uniform, all with stern faces, all obedient citizens of society. Danny Boyle makes sure that these actors are all roughly the same height, and they all have dark coloured hair. These are small details but show the level of attention Danny Boyle put into casting. Trainspotting's casting is perfect. These 2 shots exemplify that. Character introductions are designed to communicate the core personality traits of the main characters. Sick Boy fouls an opponent by sticking out a foot in a sly trip, then protests the referee's whistle, denying any wrongdoing. This act indicates that Sick Boy is willing to commit immoral acts for his own ends, but doesn't want to be seen as a bad person. Cut to Begby. He hacks a guy to the ground, then smiles about it. Begby is vicious. He knows it, and he fucking loves it. Spud is introduced as a klutz who makes a bollocks of an easy save. He wears an ironic Superman t-shirt because he's the total opposite. Clumsy, incompetent, and immoral. The girls are shown cheering on the boys. They're not just casual girlfriends, but actually care deeply about their men. Tommy runs the ball into a corner and is quickly surrounded by opponents. He angrily shouts for assistance while trying to maintain possession. Tommy is determined, emotional, and passionate. Renton gets smacked in the head with the ball right after he says the word choose life. A foreshadowing of how, throughout the movie, life will come at Renton fast and hard, despite his attempt to hide from it with drugs. Renton falling provides a lovely transition from the 5-a-side match back to the drug den, and in an immediate visual callback, there's a football blurred in the background above Renton's head, and just like the 5-a-side football, it's white with black spots, possibly even the same ball. In 2 minutes, we get a sense of all the central characters, the core themes of the movie, the iconic opening monologue, and the foundation of the plot, all set to Lust for Life by Iggy Pop, which couples perfectly with the action on screen and opens one of the most iconic movie soundtracks of all time. This is one of the best opening scenes in film history. Mother Superior's den is introduced through a camera crawl at toddler height, first passing baby Dawn, then panning to the gang of junkies. Boyle shows us the den from the perspective of the baby, who will later die due to neglect from her junkie parents. Behind the baby, hanging on the wall, is a black funeral suit, a foreshadowing of her death. Introducing Mother Superiors in this way condemns the junkies for their callous neglect of Dawn, and portrays baby Dawn as a character, a person, not a cute prop or a cheap way to induce emotional investment from the audience. The baby's room is lit up in green and the drug den in red. Green will be used throughout the movie to denote health and life. Red to denote danger, death, and heroin dependency. The baby height perspective is held as Sick Boy talks to Allison about James Bond movies. The camera switches to eye level only after Sick Boy has injected the heroin into Allison, indicating that with the onset of the heroin high, her concern for her baby has vanished. Baby Dawn rolls in, and there's a brief shot from her perspective as her father, Sick Boy, gets ready for his hit, but the camera quickly cuts back to eye level as the heroin enters his veins. Trainspotting is an utter condemnation of heroin addiction. The movie seeks to understand heroin addiction from the perspective of the junkie and to examine the consequences of addiction, but it never tries to portray the junkies as victims or to romanticize their habit. Trainspotting is a world of degenerates. The visual comedy in Trainspotting is legend. Begby tells Renton,
"No way would that poison my body where I shite."
While he lectures Renton about the dangers of heroin, Begby stands over a pint, a shot of whiskey next to it, which he downs, a lit cigarette next to the whiskey, and a pack of cigarettes next to the cigarette. The dichotomy between Renton's degenerate lifestyle and philosophical intellect is emphasized by his dialogue. He frequently comes out with brilliant lines such as,
"Well, he's always been lacking in moral fibre."
There's another great visual gag when Renton nails boards to his doorframe to prevent himself from escaping a self-inflicted cold turkey. Literally seconds later, we see the boards lying on the floor in pieces and Renton off to procure his next hit. Renton's hand is shaking as he holds the opioid tablets provided to him by Mikey Forrester. Behind him is a red clock, symbolizing the urgency he feels in his need for another hit. The longer he waits, the more agony he experiences. As Renton walks past the green curtains outside Mikey Forrester's high-rise, he doubles over in diuretic pain, symbolizing the agony of attempting to get clean. Renton heads into the bookies to take a shite, and the contrast between the absurdly filthy toilet and the bliss of the serene underwater scene that follows is a visual representation of the filth of Mother Superior's heroin den, which itself represents heroin addiction, and the ecstasy of a heroin high. While swimming underwater, Renton passes a mine, which symbolizes the mortal danger of heroin use. The high might feel 1,000 times better than the best orgasm you've ever had, but the danger of an overdose is always present, like a bomb just waiting to go off. The bomb also serves as a subtle foreshadowing of Renton's overdose later in the movie. Renton's shitting is a not very subtle metaphor for the heroin leaving his body as he detoxes. His climbing into the toilet is an analogue for the horror of heroin withdrawal, and his climbing out of the toilet signifies his first victory over heroin. He's going clean, as symbolized by him being saturated in shit water. However, the toilet diving scene also shows the vile lows Renton is willing to sink to in order to procure drugs. The first shot after Renton has gone clean is of a wide green park. Him and Sick Boy discuss pop culture and Sick Boy's so-called unifying theory of life, while they scan the park for someone to shoot with a pellet gun. This emphasizes the theme of pop philosophy juxtaposed against moral degeneracy. Sick Boy's unifying theory of life is that you have it, then you get old and shit, and it's gone forever. He mentions David Bowie as an example of this, but Bowie later disproved this theory. 2003's Reality is a fantastic album, perhaps Bowie's most underrated, and his last album, 2016's Black Star, is a masterpiece, and my favourite David Bowie album. Spud goes for a job interview arranged by the government. He wants to fail the interview so he doesn't get the job, but also wants to appear eager so he can stay on the dole. As Renton puts it,
"It's a tightrope, Spud. It's a fucking tightrope."
The blocking of this shot is excellent. Spud is surrounded by clean geometric shapes. The camera is held square to the chair, making it appear geometric. The carpet is divided into clean, even squares. Even the wall behind Spud is framed as a perfect rectangle. Spud stands out as a complete misfit in the middle of this sterile corporate space. The contrast is emphasized by the interview panel. Karen and Mr. Rogers are dressed in office suits. To modern eyes, the guy on the right might look like he's dressed over casual, but this was actually mainstream normie fashion in mid-90s Britain. The early 90s British rave and American grunge scenes made baggy clothes fashionable, but by the middle of the decade this look had been sterilised and absorbed into mainstream fashion. When Trainspotting was being filmed, Britain was blighted by the sight of young boys and middle-aged men walking the streets looking like badly dressed scarecrows heading to a corporate-sponsored rave. Trainspotting's costume designer, Rachel Fleming, dressed the main characters in skinny clothes, often washed out and ragged, to make them stand out as misfits. In the interview, Spud is dressed in drainpipe jeans, which would have appeared unprofessional to the stodgy interviewers. The camera jumps between two wide shots in jarring edits, which reflect Spud's doped out state of mind. As brilliant as the entire cast in Trainspotting is, there's no question that Robert Carlyle steals the show as Franco. Franco is one of my all-time favourites favourite movie characters. Franco's story about scaring off a guy who stared at him in a pool hall is one of the great movie monologues, up there with Morning Routine from American Psycho, There's Some Good in This World, Mr. Frodo, and Tears in Rain. Franco's story is one of the best scenes in a film filled with iconic scenes. A beautiful detail that shows how perfectly in character Robert Carlyle was is that when he throws the pint over his shoulder, he keeps the lit cigarette between his fingers, indicating what a casual act this is for Franco. The next scene is Tommy telling Renton the real story behind Franco's Homeric epic about Franco intimidating a wannabe hard man, then winning a game of pool. Behind Tommy is a mint condition poster of Iggy Pop, perfectly aligned to the wall. Later, when Tommy has spiraled into debilitating heroin addiction and contracted AIDS, the poster is torn and stained, but Tommy still keeps it on the wall. Even when he's lost everything else, he still has rock and roll in his heart and wants to maintain that part of himself. Begby leaving his shank on the table is an interesting piece of characterization. It indicates that he knows himself well enough to know that when he gets into a fight, he'll use the shank if he has it on him. The club scene that follows is infused with hypersexualized visuals. It opens with a prominent shot of a guy lovingly fondling his girl's ass on the dance floor. The drink names, visible on the chalkboard behind Begby, read Orgasm, Leg Opener, Virgin's Prayer, Sure Shag, Jelly Bean, Penis Enlarger, and Margarita. My favourite piece of sexual imagery in the entire movie is Renton, horny as a rhino in heat, standing in front of a pop art mural of a demon-faced Robert De Niro in Taxi Driver, holding James Bond's Walther PPK in one hand and Clint Eastwood's Magnum from Dirty Harry in the other. The barrel of the guns are at eye level with Renton, as well as being an obvious metaphor for an erect cock eager to fire. The guns pointing out toward the dance floor symbolise Renton scanning the crowd for a target, a female to mate with, as a ferocious lust builds inside him. The build-up of sexual desire inside Renton is emphasised by the rising swells of Temptation by Heaven 17. The next scene contains a Kubrick reference. This room is an homage to the milk bar from A Clockwork Orange. In A Clockwork Orange, one of the words on the wall is Moloko. In Trainspotting, the word Voloko is written on the wall 4 times. As in Clockwork Orange, the camera moves through the middle of the room in a slow zoom toward the main characters, who are held in the middle of the frame. This is a functional Kubrick reference as it serves to emphasise that Trainspotting's main characters are misfits, just as the Droog in A Clockwork Orange are misfits in their society. After a quick tour of Renton's sexually successful friends, we cut back to Renton, surrounded by the loserest looking dweebs Danny Boyle could pick out of an extras lineup. One guy looks like the least popular member of a failing boy band, another is at least a decade too old to be in here and has the hairline to prove it, and there's a group of young lads who look like they have borrowed their father's work clothes for a job interview. The disco diehard who tries to purchase sexual interest from Diane in the form of a drink forms a beautiful contrast to Renton, which makes Renton's successful pickup of Diane more believable, and serves as an entry point for Renton to drive at on the approach. Diehard wears a 2-decade out-of-date ruffle shirt and disco sideburns. Worse, he doesn't even have the balls to go all out with the sideburns, instead opting for castrated half-burns. This single shot is an indication of just how fucking good Ewan McGregor was in this role. His face here convincingly evokes love-struck, yearning awe. Diane steps outside to reveal that the club is called Volcano, a foreshadowing of the eruption soon to blast out of Mount Renton between Diane's legs. I love how Diane challenges Renton by first belittling him, then leaving the door to the taxi open. A simple test. If his ego can withstand her mockery and he has the balls to jump in the taxi, then she likes him. If not, he's a wimp. Fuck off back to Virgin Corner. Funny, ruthless, and efficient. But also feminine, my kind of woman. Another superb character introduction. In Diane's bedroom, there's a stuffy with its legs spread wide open behind Renton. A visual gag hinting that Diane is underage. The wall behind Diane is a visual expression of her character. A shelf full of books indicates her intelligence and high level of education. The Andy Warhol style pop art below expresses the risque, energetic, and culturally erudite side of her. And the corner where she keeps her condom jar is heavily graffitied, indicating a free-flowing cool. There's a funny contrast when the movie cuts to Spud and his girlfriend. Her room is a soft pink, is culturally sterile, boring as fuck, and even has cute little kittens on the wall. This room gives off about as much sexual vibe as Spud, who is passed out drunk. The synchronizing of the goal from Tommy's videotape with Renton coming is one of the great sex gags in cinema history. The joke was beautifully set up earlier when Renton swapped the covers of Tommy's sex tape and 100 Best Goals video, and now Renton's sexual climax comes at the exact moment Tommy's relationship with Lizzie shatters to pieces. This scene is a textbook example of setup and payoff done to perfection. Diane's face when she reveals herself to Renton as an underage schoolgirl is absolutely spectacular. She relishes Renton's horror-struck realization that he is now in danger of going down for underage sex. Spud shits the bed, and there's a visual gag when he opens the door to relate last night's wee accident to Gail and her parents. The first item that comes into view on the table is a bottle of HP brown sauce, which I never liked, by the way. I always preferred red sauce. A few moments later, Gail's family get a free cocktail of Spud brand extra refined alcohol to go with their breakfast. In the next scene, Renton walks Diane to school. The oppressive fence around the school reflects his fear of going to prison. This shot on the train platform is a Beatles reference. The frame is composed in imitation of the back cover of Sgt. Pepper's. As with the Kubrick reference from earlier, this is a functional reference. After Sgt. Pepper's, the Beatles started work on the White Album. The White Album sessions were extremely acrimonious. Ringo Starr quit the band for 2 weeks, during which time he wrote Octopus's Garden. George Martin took an unplanned vacation, one of the engineers walked out abruptly during a session, and arguments broke out between the band members over the music and the lingering presence of Yoko Ono. In Trainspotting, after the four lads leave the train platform, they have an argument and abandon the planned hike. Yoko Ono even gets a mention.
Look, Tommy, we know you're getting a hard time off Lizzie, but there's really no need to take it out on us.
This is the last time they will be together in something approaching a healthy physical state. All fall into heroin addiction shortly after. Although Octopus's Garden is Ringo Starr's most accomplished piece, due in no small part to George Harrison's extensive rewrite of the song, which you can see in the Let It Be documentary, the inclusion of another of Starr's compositions, Don't Pass Me By, was the most incorrect creative decision the Beatles made on the White Album. Tommy invites the boys to go hike a mountain with him to choose life. They get to a little wooden bridge, but Renton, Sick Boy, and Spud don't cross it. They do not cross over into Choose Life. Instead, they shout at Tommy for a while, then turn around and choose heroin. As well as serving as a metaphor for Choose Life, the bridge scene foreshadows two events. First, Tommy's descent into heroin. He tried to choose life, tried to encourage his boys to come along with him, but they drag him down to their level. He crosses back over the bridge into Choose Death. The green open spaces of Choose Life immediately give way to the red shag carpet of Mother Superiors. The bridge scene is also a foreshadowing of the ending, when Renton finally crosses the bridge, choosing life. The next scene at Mother Superiors is again shown from a baby perspective. Baby Dawn is now bathed in red light, with the green light behind her, indicating that she is now in mortal peril. When we were introduced to Dawn, she was bathed in green, but her mother's heroin habit has advanced. Dawn is now more neglected than at any previous point in her short life. When Tommy goes to Renton to get his first hit of skag, there's a green-lit window above Renton. Tommy is still in peak health at this point in the movie, and this is the last time bright green is used around him. After his first experience with heroin, Tommy falls back, wasted, into the red light of Mother Superiors. Baby Dawn, dead in her crib, is the most upsetting image of the movie and emphasizes that heroin addiction is not a victimless crime. It destroys the lives of the junkies, but far worse, it destroys the lives of their loved ones, and in the case of Baby Dawn, ended her life. Renton's response to the death of Dawn is to cook up a shot. This reaction communicates his complete moral depravity, but Danny Boyle also uses it to good narrative effect. Later in the movie, we learn that Renton has not contracted HIV during his time as a junkie, which is almost shocking considering the conditions of Mother Superiors, but this makes sense when you see how careful he is with needles. Allison offers him a needle, but he refuses because it's dirty. Instead, he finds an unused needle, which he sterilizes before use, just to be sure. Begby is often thought of as the villain of Trainspotting, or at least the worst of a group of anti-heroes, but in fact he's the least bad among them. Tommy, Spud, Sick Boy and Renton were all there getting smacked out of their minds while Dawn was crawling around dirty needles and putting fuck knows what in her mouth, and they did nothing to keep her out of danger. Begby's a madman and a thug, but he does repeatedly encourage his friends to get off heroin.
Now then, boy, they fucking skags.
You better clean up your fucking act, sunshine. Cut that shite out forever.
If they had listened to Begby, if Sick Boy had listened to Begby, gone clean and become a responsible father to his child, Dawn would almost certainly have lived. Begby is, ironically, the character with the most redeeming moral qualities among the 5 leads. The movie cuts from Sick Boy crying above his dead daughter to an image of him cut in two along a mirror seam, symbolising that he is now a broken man. When Spud and Renton are in the dock being sentenced for theft, they face a judge who sits in the middle of 5 chairs, one for each of the main characters. But there are only 4 judges, indicating that someone is about to disappear. That someone is Spud, who gets sent down for 6 months. In the next scene, Renton's friends and family are celebrating him getting a suspended sentence. Spud's mother shows up to guilt trip Renton, and Begby lays into her.
Your boy went down because he was a fucking smackhead. If that's not your fault, then I don't know what is.
There's a dartboard on the left of the frame, level with Begby's head, a visual metaphor for Begby's attack on Spud's mother, who Begby is targeting with vicious insults. The empty chair with the pint in front of it symbolises the absent Spud. When Renton overdoses at Mother Superior's, he sinks into the red shag carpet. Red surrounds his vision, signalling that he is near death. When he receives a life-saving shot, he emerges from the deathly red shag carpet, but he's on a red gurney. His life has been saved, but the threat that heroin addiction poses still looms. I've always loved the contempt the taxi driver displays when he pulls Renton roughly out of the taxi, takes the money and leaves. Just another junkie wasting his tax money. During Renton's cold turkey, his narration stops. His pain is so great that he's no longer able to form coherent thoughts. His mind becomes a confused jumble of hallucinations and twisted memories. As well as physical pain, he's tortured by the fear that he has contracted HIV from a dirty needle. The manner in which Boyle communicates Renton's fear that he has HIV is a great example of the genius of Danny Boyle's direction. Rather than Renton narrating, which would break the deep immersion within his cold turkey, Renton has a horrifying vision of his parents answering questions about HIV on a fictional quiz show hosted by Dale Winton, a popular 90s British TV personality. This vision also communicates that Renton is terrified of his parents' reaction to the news that he has contracted this fatal disease, which would instantly render him a social pariah. There's some truly inspiring editing in this sequence, such as when Dale Winton calms the crowd immediately after Renton starts having muscle spasms. There's a great dramatic beat in which Sick Boy visits Renton to give him a sanctimonious talking to.
There comes a time when you have to turn your back on that nonsense and just say no.
This couples nicely with Sick Boy's character introduction, in which he fouls an opponent, then acts the innocent. Sick Boy is responsible for his daughter's death, and he encouraged Renton to go back on Skag, yet here he is lecturing Renton about the evils of drugs. This could be a hallucination, but given that Renton's mother is standing behind Sick Boy and has furnished him with tea and biscuits, it's likely a visit, which Renton's suffering mind has twisted into a vision of torture. As well as debilitating fear, Renton experiences tremendous guilt, which manifests in the form of the dead baby Dawn crawling toward him along the roof, a shackled Spud, and an AIDS-ridden Tommy sliding along the wall. When Renton goes to visit Tommy, the words AIDS junkie scum and plague are graffitied outside Tommy's flat in red. Shite has been thrown at Tommy's front door and window, and when Renton knocks on the door, a profoundly sad-looking Tommy appears at the window, blurred by the glass and partially obscured by feces. A blunt representation of how the world sees him now. A shite-for-blood junkie who is only vaguely capable of personhood. The only identifiable cultural entity visible in the apartment is the now torn, stained, slanted poster of Iggy Pop, the last vestige of identity Tommy has left outside of being a smackhead, and a metaphor for Tommy's physical degeneration. When Tommy learns that Renton is HIV negative, his reaction is one of barely disguised disappointment.
Clear?
Aye.
That's nice.
I always felt sorry for Tommy here because it's obvious that he wanted a gutter friend, someone who could be a pariah with him, someone who would understand his suffering and join him in smothering the pain with smack. Misery loves company. When Renton tells Tommy he's clean, Tommy knows that he is condemned to total social isolation. At that point, he loses all interest in Renton and his mind returns to the sole purpose of his existence.
Got any gear on you?
When Renton moves to London, the movie's first contemporary song hits, a then popular dance track by a one-hit wonder called Ice MC. Prior to London, the only songs featured in the soundtrack are from the 70s and 80s, which emphasises the main character's otherness to the rest of society. They listen to quality, vintage rock and roll, not normie shite. The only relatively contemporary song included in Trainspotting prior to London is Sing by Blur, the one good song off their 1991 debut album, Leisure, which is their second worst album, surpassed in awfulness only by 2023's The Ballad of Darren. 36 minutes of unbroken, dreary mid, a spineless effort, utterly devoid of passion and purpose, and containing not a single redeeming musical idea. Trainspotting's rock and roll soundtrack also forms part of the heroin chic aesthetic. After Renton goes to London, the music switches to contemporary songs, the aforementioned electro dance Bilge, My Land by Pulp, and at the end, Born Slippy. The switch in music signals Renton's determination to choose life. The change in the film's soundtrack even gets its own announcement from Diane.
Music's changing.
The hideous dance song, easily the most dated piece of music on the Trainspotting soundtrack, emphasises Renton's embrace of life. He's mainstream now. He's almost chosen life. But then, as soon as Begby knocks on the door, the dance track stops. Choose life is over. For now. And when Begby arrives, he's wearing bright red pants, signalling that Renton is being pulled back into the life he's trying to escape. And the apartment building hallway, which we see for the first time after Begby shows up, is painted red. The growing pile of discarded cigarette packets is a metaphor for Renton's increasing anger at Begby's presence. When Begby and Renton go out to celebrate Begby winning £75 on a horse race, Begby picks up a transvestite he's mistaken for a woman. They go to the transvestite's car, where Begby freaks out after discovering a ball sack where a vagina should be. And on the wall near the car is a lit up sign that reads, "No ball games." The scene showing Tommy's apartment after his death contains only the Iggy poster and a football, symbols of two defining aspects of his short life: athleticism and rock and roll. The poster is torn, faded and stained. The football is deflated and banged out of shape. And Tommy is dead. The camera pans away from the Iggy poster, and by the time a used needle comes into view next to Tommy's corpse, the poster is so out of focus it is barely identifiable, symbolising how, as he became more dependent on heroin, his old life and sense of self faded further from view until it was all gone. After the funeral, the boys head to Mother Superior's for a piss-up, and Sick Boy expounds his plan for a heroin deal in London. The funeral suits have become business suits. The red shag carpet and assorted junky garbage strewn across the floor is gone. The junkies have graduated and are now dealers. In London, the lads walk across the street in imitation of the Abbey Road album cover. Everyone carries a duffel bag at knee height to ensure that this image has the same visual equilibrium of the iconic album cover. Sick Boy and Spud carry their bags in their left hand, and Renton and Begby carry theirs in their right hand to avoid visual imbalance. This Abbey Road reference serves as another subtle bit of foreshadowing. Abbey Road was the Beatles' last album, and many Beatles fans would argue their greatest triumph. The band broke up shortly after Abbey Road was released. The Skag deal is the boys' greatest triumph and their final act together before they too are forever broken apart. There's a continuity error in the room where the drug deal goes down. There's no mirror above the sink when they do the deal, but the next morning one has appeared for Renton to gaze into in preparation for his treachery. The four newly minted kingpins head to a pub to celebrate. The painting above them depicts 4 British cavalrymen, 3 leading in front and 1 hiding behind, as if looking for an opportunity to bolt. Franco is bringing a round back to the table when he bumps into some guy, spilling drink on himself and catalysing a patented Franco psycho session. After trading insults with the guy, Franco drops 3 pints on the floor where they shatter apart, and he glasses the guy with the other one. The 4 pints, once together, are now a shattered, bloody mess lying all over the floor, a foreshadowing of the violent, tragic breakup of the friend group. Prior to this incident, Renton has been in 2 minds as to whether or not to steal the money. The precise moment he finally decides to steal the money comes here. His eyes dart toward the money on the table, and his friends are now just indistinguishable blurs in the background. He's already left them behind mentally, and now it's just a matter of getting the money away from them. Franco holds his knife in the same hand he uses to take a thoroughly intoxicating draw of a cigarette, indicating that violence is his drug. Born Slippy Knox kicks in when Franco's cigarette smoke hits Renton's face. The now iconic song was originally a B-side to a single called Born Slippy. Danny Boyle somehow came across Born Slippy Knox and insisted on having it in the film, even going so far as to screen parts of the then unfinished Trainspotting for Underworld in order to obtain permission to use the song. Born Slippy Knox was reissued as a single and got to number 2 in the UK charts as a result of Trainspotting's success. Had it not been for Trainspotting, this absolute gem of a song would never have been known to anyone outside of a small number of hardcore Underworld fans. After Renton steals the bag, he steps over Sick Boy. He's literally stepping over his friends to get what he wants. Renton nods goodbye to Spud, goes out the red door of the hotel, heads out into the light of day, and finally crosses the bridge he couldn't make it across earlier in the movie. He chooses life. He starts listing off the banalities of an ideal middle-class life, and as he does, his face becomes more and more blurry until it disappears altogether. He's no longer an outsider, just another face in the crowd, indistinguishable from everyone else.